Our next guest was born the daughter of one of the most recognizable actors in the world, and she's sharing for the first time about a childhood she says was shaped by confusion, deprivation, violence, but also by love. Carving her own path as the author of the new book, The 10, a memoir of family in the open road, she takes us on a cross-country journey to uncover family secrets, piece together the truth of her late mother, and discover her own sense of identity along the way. Please welcome E.A. Hanks. It is so good to have you.
Thank you for having me. I'm so pleased to be here.
Congratulations on the book.
Thank you very much.
It is deeply personal, but I think very brave of you to share.
Thank you.
Your father is Tom Hanks. Some of us have heard of him.
He's been in a couple things, Joe versus the Volcano, Turner and Hooch,
Yes.
The Man with the One Red Shoe, all American
to name
classics.
A few.
Yeah.
And when you were very young, you actually joined him on the big screen. In Forrest Gump, you played the role of school bus girl.
Yes,
What do you
mean girl
remember
on
from
bus.
that?
What I remember is that I was the only kid that didn't get paid.
Amazing. He's got to get you a better
yeah,
agent.
Right, exactly. Yeah, my representation was horrible. It was, my baby brother, and he got me a horrible deal. But yeah, it was 2 days in the back of a bus in South Carolina in the middle of summer.
Yep.
So, it was not the look, and it was not the job, but it was a lot of fun. I had a good time.
Amazing. Well, your parents divorced when you were just 5 years old,
Yes.
And you lived mostly with your mother, Susan Dillingham.
Yes.
And she moved you and your brother Colin from Los Angeles to Sacramento without even telling your dad.
Yeah.
Tell us about what life was like in that period growing up with your mom and being away from your father.
Yeah, I think anybody who has an experience with mental illness and violence in the home kind of understands that secretive life that happens behind closed doors.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly one of the blessings of growing up with my brother and my mom in Sacramento is that I was allowed to have anonymity. I'm sure there's a couple people this week that went, Tom Hanks has a daughter? This is like plot twist. But the experience of growing up with her was good days and bad days. And I think anybody who has lived with an addict or lived kind of around someone where you never really know what you're gonna get, it's a childhood that has incredible love, but it's also a childhood spent walking on eggshells. And that's what it was like with us.
Right, and it can be so hard because you are the child and sometimes have to almost step into the parent role when you're...
1,000%. I think a lot of times when people have questions about troubled childhoods, they think, well, why wasn't anyone helping or why didn't anyone step in? And the truth is because my job, as I perceived it, was to protect my mom and keep her secrets.
Yeah. Well, then when you were 14, you moved from living with your mom in Sacramento to living with your father, your stepmother, Rita Wilson, and your half-brothers, Truman and Chet, in Los Angeles. How did your life change going from that environment you were in to then moving to Los Angeles and being with this high-profile, well-known family?
Yeah, so I grew up kind of the younger sister to a mysterious older brother in a house where the phone never rang and no one ever came to the door because other kids weren't allowed to come to our home. And then I suddenly was living in Grand Central where the phone never stopped ringing and the door was always going. And I was the big sister to two younger brothers, and I went from frankly, not often having food in the house to family dinner every night, plus Rita's grandparents were always around. So it was a seismic shift in the experience for a 14-year-old girl.
Yeah, I say any girl who's been 14 knows that's a remarkably hard time already.
Yeah, in the middle of the 7th grade when everyone is their nicest.
Exactly. Well, something that comes across is despite the many challenges and the hardship you went through at the hand of your mom, there's also a lot of love there. And I think people can relate that there can be a very challenging relationship, but then parts of it that are beautiful. And something that you share is you recreate this road trip that you guys took from California to Florida on the 10, which you ended up naming the book after. And you went back in a minivan and did that yourself to kind of retrace the footsteps of what you did with your mother. What made you want to do that, and what was that like?
So my mom died in 2002, and we put everything into storage. And I grabbed these 2 tubs of basically loose leaves and notebooks and stuff like that. And like 10 years after she died, I finally went through them and read these journals, and I read her description of witnessing her father, who she never talked about, commit a horrible crime.
Wow.
Just a brutal, brutal crime, a podcast-worthy crime, as I describe it. And I think anybody who's grown up around mental illness understands what I say when we say, I wasn't at all surprised, but I was deeply shocked.
Yeah.
Because there was this sense of, I'm missing a part of my mother's story. So when I found those journals, I realized, okay, here's something concrete that I can research to try to find out, did this happen? Did this happen the way my mother described? Or actually, is she describing something that happened to herself? So I moved into a van for 6 months.
Wow.
I drove around America trying to have a conversation about identity and location and how the places we're from really become part of who we are.
What drew me to your story was I feel like there are so many stories of families as it's your safe place. They're the best. Moms are always so beloved. But we don't get enough stories of imperfect families, despite the fact that that's many of us. What do you hope that people take away from reading your story?
I think you don't have to have a crazy mom or a famous dad to get curious about who you are and where you come from. And anybody who sits down to have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea with their parents, whoever they just think of as the people that raised them, your grandparents, chosen family, aunts and uncles, you will always hear something that surprises you. It doesn't have to be a crazy crime that you move into a car to investigate. You might just find out, I didn't know that's how my parents met. But I think the greatest reward of this was discovering how much is brought to you when you just get curious about your own life and your own, like, why you are the way you are.
Right.
Why your parents are the way that they are. And that's kind of what I'm hoping people take away. But I hope people get out and see America. And I think and get curious about that, and then get curious about, your parents.
I love the idea of the road trip because I think it's something that we need to bring back doing these long, there's so much to see here in America.
You feel like you're in a Bruce Springsteen song.
Exactly.
You've got two lines in front of you that will never end, and there's so much to look at and experience.
Yes. Well, family is obviously such a personal part of your life. This is a very personal story. What's your family's reaction been to you writing the book?
Well, I don't think you can get more supportive than saying, take my car and I'll help you pick out camping gear, because if I let you, your tent and everything will be pink. And it's like, well, what's wrong with that? But, when I talked to my dad and my brother, I explained I'm telling my story, but it's an incontrovertible truth that in telling my story, I'm going to swerve into your guys' lanes every now and then. But they were both the first readers of the manuscript, and my dad gave me an incredible gift when he said, that is an accurate description of what it was to love and fear this woman. And my brother gave me a gift in saying, you balance out the good with the bad. And I think anybody, again, who's experienced good days and bad days with someone who's an addict or dealing with a mental health situation, you have to describe both, because that's the totality of who they are.
Exactly. And it is so relatable to so many families, so many of us who are dealing with families with addiction and mental health issues. And I think you're really going to help people by sharing your story. So
I hope so.
It was wonderful to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. EA's new book, The 10, is on sale now. Scan the QR code on your screen to pick up a copy. Have a great day.